Every function in a company has a system. Sales has CRMs, finance has Gap. Why has the CEO seat, the most important role in the company, been running on instinct for this long?
20 or 25 people, you're typically performing most of the executive roles yourself. You have the executive team meeting when you get ready in the morning in front of the mirror. My wife waking me up in the middle of the night because I was grinding my teeth, which is a disorder caused because of stress, right?
The CTO of a company would do a certain job in the organization, or the CFO will do a certain role. But CEO is somebody who pulled in everything that's urgent.
I don't think anybody anytime soon is going to want to work for an AI CEO.
This is the software that does not ask you what to do, it tells you what to do. CEO failure isn't random, it follows patterns. So, what are the most common ones, and why do smart people keep falling into that trap?
Big dreams don't come quietly.
They demand risk.
They demand fire. They demand transformation. Welcome to The Corporate Life, Billion-Dollar Conversations. Hosted by Hina Siddiqui, CEO and founder of Corporate Influence Media, creator of Capital Stage Credibility Positioning, 4-time Global Award winner, featured across more than 700 global outlets, and heard in 94 countries. Join us as we sit with tech CEOs, multi-million-dollar entrepreneurs, and leading investors, the people building what's next. Here, success isn't a headline. It's a human story. The turning points, reinventions, failures, breakthroughs, and bold decisions that change everything. Because every life is a movie, and you're the star of yours.
Joel, every function in a company has a system. Sales has CRMs, finance has Gap. Why has the CEO seat, the most important role in the company, been running on instinct for this long?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I've struggled with to try to answer for about the last 20 years, because it seems obvious that software should be able to help a CEO do their job, just like it helps a salesperson do their job or an accounting person do their job. And so I think the truth is that there's been no one that's developed software that had enough experience in the CEO role and was interested in that problem to really explore it. And then the modern LLMs have really given us an opportunity to do things that we just wasn't easy to do in software, specifically around things that help the CEO.
Yeah, so you have been in this role of a CEO for 30 years and multiple 9-figure exits. What was the moment you realized that this role has no system and that frustrated you enough to build one? Because when we are having some kind of struggle with something that we don't have the options available for, we end up building that. So, what was that for you?
Yeah, well, it really goes back to why I got into running my own businesses. I'm not necessarily the classic entrepreneur who has these ideas that they feel like they just have to pursue. I got into being CEO because I was really interested in how a company or an organization of any type runs well. What makes it run well? I'd been in the U.S. Navy, and we had a bunch of really smart people, but the organization didn't run very well. And so that's really what led me down the CEO journey. And so when I built my first company of scale, and we went from 100 people to 200 people in 12-month period, that's when I really began to think about, how do you do that? How do you run it well? How do you manage a company with 200 people? And it's a great problem to have, that you're growing so fast that you need to deal with it. But that's where my interest in the problem really started.
Yeah, and it's a kind of generic role as I see it, because I am a CEO of 2 companies and a managing partner of another company. So I see that like everything else just needs my attention all the time. For example, the CTO of a company would do a certain job in the organization, or the CFO will do a certain role. But CEO is somebody who would just, pulled in everything that's urgent. So how do you deal with that? And could you give me some examples of how you dealt with that situation and how you solved it?
Yeah, so interesting. In most jobs, the problem is not knowing what to do. It's knowing how to do it. So for example, if you're the head of sales, you know what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go sell more stuff. The problem you're constantly struggling with is how do you execute on that, right? The problem as CEO is you can do anything. As you say, you're kind of generic. So deciding what to do, what you should actually focus on, and what the CEO uniquely is capable of doing, that's the real challenge to the job. And so it's a real change for most people who become experts in a functional area of the business. in their career, and then they get promoted or they start something, and they don't really see the whole elephant, I call it. They see only sales or they see only marketing. They think the CEO job's just a bigger sales job or a bigger marketing job, when in reality it's not. It's a generic coordination job between all of these functional areas, and that
Yeah.
requires a very different skill set, and it requires a very different approach to the job.
Right. And we as CEOs are brilliant at almost everything. So it's right. And then it's always a little difficult for me to refrain myself from intervening in things that actually don't need my energy and attention as much as the other things do. So that's a challenge. And how do you distinguish that? Like what's worth your time and energy more than the other things? Because you are brilliant at everything, right?
Well, we think we are anyway. I look at a business as kind of like a six-wheeled vehicle. And so on one side, you've got sales, marketing, and product. And on the other side, you've got customers, employees, and shareholders.
Hmm.
And so what I'm always thinking every quarter is I sit down and I start thinking, which of those wheels on my six-wheeled vehicle is turning the slowest? Which one's holding me back? Which one's preventing me from making as much progress? And it doesn't mean that the person in charge of that's not doing a good job. So it's sometimes, it's just
Yeah.
not working, right? And so you've got to figure out where the bottleneck is in the organization, and you spend time addressing that. And of course, when you speed that wheel up, then another one becomes the slowest one. And so it's a constant optimization process with like 6 plates spinning in the air, and you're trying to keep them all spinning at the same speed.
Correct. Yeah, that's true. And CEO failure isn't random, it follows patterns, I believe. So, what are the most common ones, and why do smart people keep falling into that trap?
Yeah, the most common one I think that especially founder CEOs deal with is the way you run a company at 20 or 25 people. Yes, you're CEO, but at 20 or 25 people, you're typically performing most of the executive roles yourself.
Yeah.
And so you have the executive team meeting when you get ready in the morning in front of the mirror. When you get to 50, 75, certainly 100 people, now you can't do all those executive roles. And you have to transition and hand off each of those executive roles to somebody who's hopefully a better expert in their functional area than you are. And there becomes this full-time CEO job, which is more a coordination job than it is a doer job. And a lot of founders really struggle with that because, as you say, they were good at doing, that's why they were successful, but they try to run the company at 100 the same way they ran it at 25, doing everything, looking at all the data, being the executive. You can't do it 4 times faster. They were already working as much as they could at 25. So trying to do it 4 times faster doesn't work. So there's a fundamental shift that happens between about 25 employees and 100 that a lot of CEOs never make that shift.
And most people misunderstand what a CEO actually does. So what are the 5 things only a CEO can do, and why do most people spend their time on everything else?
Yeah, when I wrote my first book, I did some research. I thought I was going to find out that Harvard MBA had a model of how to be CEO, and Stanford would have a model, and I would come in as the practical person and tell them, you academics don't know what you're talking about. But I found out they didn't have models. And so I had to kind of create one. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about CEO obviously can do anything, but what should they be doing? What can they not delegate to somebody else? And so I came up with 5 things. And the number one's own the vision. Some people would talk about strategy. This is, to me, a little bigger than strategy. It's the whole, it's strategy and the whole direction of the organization. CEO doesn't necessarily have to create it, but they have to own it. They have to be able to explain it to everybody, from the most junior person to the most technical person in the organization. And then the CEO has to provide the right resources. Those resources tend to be capital and human resources, of course. And the CEO is ultimately responsible for making sure both are available as needed by the organization. And then once you've done those things, then we start talking about a culture, how things get done in your organization. And the CEOs, I say, a company or an organization is like a community, and the CEO is both the mayor and the sheriff of the community. And so they determine largely the culture of the organization. I talk about decision-making as a 4th area. It could be part of culture, but it's so important how decisions get made in your organization that I call it out as a separate item. And what you're really trying to do is you're trying to train everyone in the organization in such a way that they make the same decision the CEO would make if they could be down there with all the data and
Mm.
information that that person has down in the organization. And then finally, if you do all those things, you can deliver performance, which everyone would say the CEO is responsible for the performance of the organization. But I put a little finer point on it. I talk about delivering predictable performance because
Mm.
that's what really the market cares about. That's what investors care about. You know, every public CEO has to go to an earnings call every quarter, and what they are judged on is how you told us what you were going to do. Did you do what you told us you were going to do? And if you did, you know, or exceeded that, the stock goes up. And if you didn't, the stock goes down. And even in private companies, that's what a board's looking for. Tell us what you're going to do and then go do it. And if you can't do that consistently, boards get very impatient.
Right. And do you think that there's the ability to trust people, because trust your team? If you don't trust your team enough, then you would end up doing everything on your own. So the ability to trust people can also give you that power of, peaceful and not burnt in the whole process, where you feel exhausted because you are so much things you are carrying on your shoulders.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm a big fan of, it was Reagan who said, trust but verify. But also to trust, you have to communicate clearly to start with what the vision is, what the values of the organization are, what the strategic objectives. And a lot of CEOs, unfortunately, don't spend enough time with those kind of things, don't communicate them clearly enough. And so then people don't really know where we're going. And if people aren't absolutely clear on where the organization's going, they're not going to row in the right direction. And you end up with a bunch of people in the boat and they may be trying very hard. They're rowing very hard, but some
Mm.
think we're going over here and some think we're going over there. Right. And that's the challenge for the CEO, is keeping everyone aligned. And so, yes, you trust, but before you can trust them, you got to tell them where you're going.
Right. So now just let me ask you this question, because I'm just curious that you have built so many companies and made some exits too. When you were growing up, did you know that you would get into entrepreneurship or you would become a CEO, or it was a complete new journey that life unfolded for you?
Yeah, no, I did not know that. I thought I was going to be a university professor because that's what my dad did. And
Mhm.
that's what he wanted me to be. And I did well in school. And then I took a job with the U.S. Navy teaching at what they call Naval Nuclear Power School. And my thought process there was, I'll see if I like teaching. The Navy would pay for a master's degree. So I said, I'll get a master's while I'm doing it. And then I'll go get a PhD and be a university professor. Well, I found out I loved the teaching part. But I was no longer interested in engineering, which was what my degree was in. Took a couple of master's classes, and it just didn't interest me. And I had, you know, serendipitously met a couple of what we would now call entrepreneurs when I was in high school in my small town. We didn't use the word entrepreneur in those days. They were kind of small business people, but one particularly would buy a business, fix it up, and then sell the business and then move on to the next one, you know. And I found that fascinating. And so when I realized that engineering and a PhD in engineering wasn't the path I wanted to go down, I decided to try the entrepreneurship path. And then, you know, as many entrepreneurs know, once you start going down that path, you become unqualified to do anything else. So you better figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah. And what has been your life like? Like, not just the practical side of it, but the emotional side of it. Because every day we get up thinking something, feeling something. The day is chaotic sometimes. Sometimes, like, you need to deal with a lot of things and you feel so much burnt out, exhausted. And in fact, this morning I was feeling like there's lots of things going on in my life. And I was thinking that, okay, now after these projects get over, I'm going to take a 7-day vacation, like, by the beach, and would not even open my laptop. Sometimes you think like that, but you can't always do that. What has been your experience like?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's very different, but I think most people don't appreciate until they experience it the level of stress when you have responsibility for the organization and everybody's getting a paycheck every week
Yeah.
and those
And
kind of things. I mean, I started my first book with the story of my wife waking me up in the middle of the night because I was grinding my teeth, you know, which is disorder caused because of stress, right? And I had played high level competitive tennis, competitive sports, Division One sports, and so I thought, that's a stressful environment. I know how to handle stress, but it's very different, the constant burden of being CEO. And I had about a 20 or 25-year period of my life where I was always running something that had other people's money involved as well.
Yes.
And that was a personal burden to me. And I remember finally, after 20, 25 years, I sold the last business that I had somebody else's money in. And I remember the relief that just, went off my shoulders, because now if I screwed up, it was just my money, and that's okay. I can deal with that. But screwing up and losing other people's money, that was very stressful.
It's interesting. I know that this is not maybe may not be relevant for a lot of people, but my mentor, one of my money mindset mentors, just taught me that just believe that your money is your money and everybody's money is your money. And then it would be easier for you to deal with situations, right?
Yes, no, I very much stressed over other people's money, much more than I stressed over my own.
Joel, most CEOs are using AI wrong. And what should they actually be using it for? What should they never delegate to it?
Yeah, that's a big question. So let me break it up into a few parts. First of all, I think it's very important. How do you think about AI? I think a lot of people are thinking about AI like they thought about software, traditional software. And okay, here's another software program that will help me do something. That is, I think, not the right way to think about AI. The mental model I have for AI is, imagine the smartest new college grad that you've ever hired, but instead of just having a finance degree or a marketing degree or an engineering degree or whatever, they got all the degrees. Okay. So they know, they're a academic expert in all the areas. But if you hire that person tomorrow and put them in your business, they're not going to know what to do. They're not going to know anything about your business. They're not going to know all the underlying culture and knowledge that they need to share. And of course, what happens in most businesses is we hire somebody that we think is really smart. We put them in, we give them a manager, we give them an easy project. They start working, they start having water cooler conversations, kind of by osmosis. They pick up some things. They show some initiative. They see something they can do and say, hey, let me do that. And they go work on that, and that learns, and they make some mistakes. But, over a period of 6 to 12 months or something, they become valuable in the business. The problem is AI is not going to have water cooler conversations. AI is not going to show initiative. It basically sits there and waits you to ask it what to do. And so it's very important that you think about all these and catalog all these important things about your business. What is your strategy? What is your approach that's unique to the market? What is the institutional knowledge that somebody needs to be successful? What is the personalities that are in the organization? So how does AI communicate with different people? All these things are issues that you need to solve to make any employee successful, but it's doubly a problem with AI because it's not just going to happen. And so I don't think most CEOs are thinking about these underlying fundamentals that they need to do. Otherwise, AI becomes just a better search engine, and that's not utilizing AI to its capability.
Right. And there are a few parts of the business where humans need to be there, right? You cannot depend on AI. So it's not like don't make every problem an AI problem and don't try to use AI everywhere where it's actually not needed.
Yeah, AI in most cases is an assistant. It is a tool. It is not a replacement. I don't think anybody anytime soon is going to want to work for an AI CEO, right? We want to work for people. We're not going to buy things typically that are expensive, at least, if we don't have a relationship with a person. Relationships are just going to become more and more valuable. So AI can absolutely speed up tasks, but we've been on that journey for a long time. I mean, we've been, computerizing and then automating in businesses for a long time. Many things that we used to do by hand, we now have automated, and AI is the next capability in that area of automation. So it makes a lot of automation easier. It speeds up a lot of things, no question. If you're a developer, you're using a lot of AI to write code and do things that before you might have done in a more manual way. But that doesn't replace, because every business has access to this same AI technology, and
Correct.
therefore, business is competitive. And so, you're not going to be able to lay off 20% of the people because you've got AI doing it, because your competitor may decide they're going to offer higher services because AI is doing work, and the customers are going to buy more from them because instead of, they didn't lay off 20% of their people, and so they have better service or whatever. It's a very challenging game to understand where the value is going to get subsumed as you integrate AI into your business, but you have to, because everybody's got access to it.
Yeah, exactly. Joe, you have made Chat CEO, and this is the first AI platform built for the enterprise CEO. What does that actually look like in practice? What does it actually do?
Yeah, so the best analogy I can use is it kind of replaces four functions that often CEOs have around them in some form or another. So it can serve as a coach. It understands coaching principles. It understands all the great thinkers in business history, the Druckers, the Lencioni, the et cetera, because it's aware of their materials. And so it can coach you like a good CEO coach would do. It can also be a chief of staff for you. It understands and has a built-in operating rhythm and system that it reminds you and helps you run consistently across the organization. And that's a big thing in my world. I teach CEOs all the time about having a consistent system to run to make the trains run on time. It also serves as a communication partner. So a lot of CEOs have, communication people when they're writing important messages to investors or to the employees. AI is really good at that because it understands personalities. You can ask it questions about particular people. It can understand the members of your board. It can understand the members of your executive team, how best, to communicate with them. And then AI also, I've built into Chat CEO all the training I do, all the books I've written, all the blog posts I've written on best practices. So it's a very curated set of ideas around how to be CEO. And, if you use just a generic LLM and ask it how to be CEO, you're going to get the average slop that is out on the internet about being CEO, right?
Garbage in, garbage out kind of concept.
Yes. And so, what we've done is, over the last 20, 25 years, I have curated all the best content on how to be CEO. And I think, I'm one of the leading experts in the world on how to do that, because I've curated this content and I've taught for about 20 years CEOs how to do it. And when you teach something like that, you constantly refine and learn. And so it's really a powerful capability that most CEOs didn't have access to before without the LLMs.
This is very interesting. When I was going through your website, just reading about the product that you have made, like this Chat CEO, it says that this is the software that does not ask you what to do; it tells you what to do. So this is interesting. So would you talk a bit about that as well?
Yeah. So, I have systematized what I do as CEO basically into a kind of 12-step process that if you make me CEO of a company tomorrow, these are the kind of things I'm going to do. And so, one of the first things you got to do as CEO is figure out where you're going. And we do that through creating a one-page strategic plan that has a list of mission, vision, values, strategic objectives or goals out 3 years in the future. And that's a starting point. You got to beat that to the ground and get agreement with your board and everything. That's where we're going. Once you have that, then we ask questions like, who are our competitors? Let's describe our market. Let's understand our market. And so you gather that information. And then, when you have a lot of that information, any other documents, maybe some financials or whatever, now the LLM can be really powerful because it understands your unique organization. And we have the LLM generate a detailed business plan about all the functional areas, what they should be doing, basically. And it's not going to be, 100% accurate, but it's going to get you 85% of the way
Yeah.
there. And then the CEO goes through and looks through that, and he sends it to his department heads and say, does this sales plan make sense? And they tweak it, whatever. But, most organizations never get to the point of having detailed goals on a consistent basis about what they're going to do and tracking those, because it's a heavy lift, and a CEO can't keep all the different functional areas in their head at the same time and what they should do and but the LLM can. And so, that draft business plan is really valuable. And then you start getting into an operating rhythm of, hey, we meet once a week and we go over these goals and we have one-on-ones and here's what we talk about. And so, yes, the LLM guides the CEO through a simple but consistent process of how to run the company. It doesn't make the decisions for you. That's, CEO's got to do, but it can help you structure everything, never have to deal with a blank sheet of paper, always starting from a draft that saves, tremendous amount of time. And it becomes personalized and customized just for you. It understands your personality. It understands the company. It sees who, all the things that are going on, and it becomes more powerful over time.
That's interesting.
Get ready for the ultimate challenge, this or that. Choose fast, trust your instincts, and let's go.
Joel, now let's play a game with that I love to play with every guest on the show. It's called This or That. I'm going to give you two options. You just need to pick one instinctively, no overthinking there. And this helps us understand your personality much better in the closed-ended question. So are you ready?
I think I'm ready.
Instinct or operating system, which runs most CEOs?
Instinct.
5-time CEO or one defining company?
5-time CEO.
Managing the future or fighting today's fires?
Oh, managing the future, no question.
The CEO who admits they don't know or the one who always has an answer?
CEO admits they don't know. That's very important.
Yeah, I love that. AI that replaces CEO judgment or AI that sharpens it?
AI that sharpens it.
The board that challenges you or the one that supports you?
The board that challenges you.
And why is that?
That's a long, and there's probably a long answer there to what I think a board should do. But, if they're just supporting the CEO, they're not providing a lot of value. And the board should provide value, and they can do that by being involved, like in this one-page strategic plan discussion. Board's critical in getting alignment. Hey, everybody agree this is where we're going. I do not believe the board should be active in running the company. They should leave that to the CEO, but they should challenge the CEO and make sure the CEO is seeing the world as objectively and seeing reality as well as possible.
That's interesting and so true. The CEO tightrope or chat CEO, which one will change more lives?
I think chat CEO.
Hire slow, fire fast, or the other way around?
I actually am hire fast, fire fast.
Okay. Strategy or execution, which one actually runs a company?
Oh, execution.
The CEO who reads or the CEO who ships?
Both.
Well played. Thank you. It was interesting. Joel, what would you like to say to the CEOs right now who are watching us or listening to us? Like what they should do to get to the first billion in their business journey?
Yeah. Don't believe that you have to figure everything out for yourself. A lot of CEOs are successful because they figured out something unique, either a product or a sales approach or whatever. Great. But the tendency is then to want to reinvent everything and learn themselves and do it their way. And I think that's a big mistake. Figure out where your competitive advantage is that's unique. And then there's access to all the world's knowledge out there and best practices that the faster you can learn, the more you can leverage, and the more success you'll have.
Right. For those who would like to follow the rest of your movie, how can they do that?
Sure. I love talking to CEOs. I'm happy to personally engage. Chatceo.co is our website if you're interested in the Chat CEO product, but I'm happy just to engage in general. And then my Substack is Managing the Future, where I write on all the best practices around being CEO.
Great. And before I let you go, every life is a movie and you are the star of yours. We believe that in season 3. And I personally believe that too. What is the title of your movie?
One lucky guy.
Okay, and why is that?
Because you realize when you've been doing this a long time that luck has a big factor. You like to think it's all everything you've done, but I'm sure there are equally talented people who've had bad luck and their story hasn't turned out as well. And so I always recognize there's a lot of luck involved in this game. And that's the question I want to ask the good Lord if I get a chance is how much was luck and how much was skill?
I love that. This is very interesting. Thank you for your time today. I really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and learned a lot from you.
Thank you.
This is The Corporate Life. More stories, more insight, more truth. Until the next episode, stay curious. Don't forget to subscribe.